Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you're anything like me, then you know that today was as confusing as ever to be an investor. We started off the day looking like all things were going well and that a ceasefire was only a matter of time to happen. Then, during midday at around 11 a.m. to noon, we noticed a slight bearish reversal occurring after reports surrounding that JD Vance was not going to be attending Pakistan on Wednesday. We were left in silence from midday up until around 3:50 p.m. where we got a tip on Twitter from, funny enough, Bricks News and Polymarket that Iran was no longer interested in talks and will not be attending Pakistan for the Wednesday deadline. Now, I understand that it can be very hectic to keep up with everything that is happening in the markets today, especially with this whole Iran-US conflict. It just seems nagging and not going away. Well, don't you worry, you're at the right place for everything that you need to know. Why, hello there, guys. My name is Noah, and this is Stocks with Noah. And funny enough, actually, this is my first ever YouTube video on this channel. So, once again, thank you for, coming out, showing me some love and giving me a chance. Like I mentioned, I'm going to explain and, just kind of keep track of everything that happened in chronological order today so you guys aren't left guessing, as well as what this actually means for your money. So, let's get right into it. Firstly, we saw the markets immediately after Trump talked this morning at 8:30 in the morning that they shot up and were very jolly and liked what he was talking about. Investors really enjoyed what he was talking about. Quoted from CNBC this morning, Donald Trump mentioned that a deal is most likely getting done today. Obviously, markets love this and shot up in the pre-market, setting up what could be a great day for investors. You know what? Let's go to TradingView here. I like the UI a little better. As we can see here, it topped out at about 71.45 on the SPY here. And near the end of the day, it kind of dwindled down, ultimately ending about 45 points lower. But we will get into why that happened. The biggest winners for today were, being software and hardware companies like AMD, Microsoft, Marvell, which had a very decent run up today until some downward pressure took it over. Anyways, overall, it was kind of looking really good to be a great day in the markets. And like I mentioned, I just kind of wanted to come back here and talk about AMD. What a run it's been on the stock. As an investor myself, I kind of saw it was capitulating at this 198 line down here. The fundamentals of the company were only getting better, but the stock price just kept going down. There's a lot of downward pressure, and I knew it was being oversold. And I knew that eventually the switch over to agentic AI and inference, which is something I would love to talk about in a future video. If you guys don't know what that means, it's essentially just autonomous AI in real life, kind of just integrating it more into what we have now, which I would love to go into a big deep dive on. I'm going to talk about it for hours, and I'd love to keep you guys up to date about it. Anyways, I'm a happy AMD investor, and really happy with the returns here. As we saw, it was dipped to about 188, and it's peaking at about 288, sorry. So almost a $100 difference, just under it. I know it's 286, but we're going to get there one day. Personally, me, I believe it can be a $350 stock, just given everything that, they are accomplishing and what they can accomplish with this whole switch to their chips. But like I mentioned, I could do a whole deep dive on that. Please leave in the comments down below if you guys would love to see something like that. But like I mentioned, AMD is one of the biggest winners from today. After that happened, we got a big tip on Twitter at around 11 to noon. Stocks were ripping this morning. And then they peaked out around here, as we can see. That's open. They peaked out around here a little bit. Obviously, it shot up for AMD, but majority of stocks peaked out around here. And then, it kind of shot down like crazy around 11, whatever. Not a great look for the market. Anyways, the reason why that happened is, I'll get into it, a little tip on Twitter from a few untrusted sources. We're floating the idea around that maybe JD Vance isn't actually going to go to Pakistan. Now, in a vacuum, this is extremely, extremely, extremely bearish. In my opinion, this is extremely bearish. The whole point of JD Vance going was to be, the mediator, the peacemaker on the United States side, as he is seen as that individual in the Trump administration globally. Also, for personal agenda reasons, he has a lot of good reasons to go there and get a deal done. He's most likely going to be the successor of the Republican Party running for presidency in 2028. And he would like to be known as the guy who kind of brought peace to the Middle East and peace to Iran. Why wouldn't he? So it's definitely in his personal agenda. And that would be a huge selling point in his campaign if he were to get that done. Anyways, though, after those tips came through on Bricks News and Polymarket, we were kind of seeing a lot of capitulation in the market. Then, after Polymarket came out, Kalshi came in to solidify the claims as true. Then Axios and the Wall Street Journal came in to basically say that, maybe JD Vance won't be attending. and this could get a lot more serious, as we're seeing on Twitter here. I couldn't find the exact tweet. It was so long ago, and if you guys keep up with Twitter, Polymarket posts like every freaking minute, man. So it's kind of hard to keep up. But yes, like I mentioned, Axios posted, the Wall Street Journal posted. Funny enough, Axios here, I was never really paying attention much to Axios before this Iran war, but I gotta give them credit where credit's due. These guys have been on top of everything, every newsletter, everything related to the war. They've been on top of, they've been first to it, and they've been right majority of the time, almost all the time they've been right. So these guys definitely earned a subscriber in myself. These guys are really good. Anyways, though, just pay more attention to Axios. They got a lot of good free stuff here. This was a free one that they came out with that I would love to, I'm going to be talking about later. So just to get you guys a little warm up to that. Essentially, after all these companies came out and talked about, JD Vance's flight is delayed and he's probably not going to go to Islamabad today. At around 1:40 p.m., that kind of came out and that kind of came out like midday and markets bottomed out at around 1:40 p.m.-ish. I can pull up the charts here, as you can see. It came out around 11 right here, kind of went down a little bit, popped right back up, doing pretty decent on the day, shot all the way down, kind of capitulating, and then around like 1:30-ish, 1:40-ish, it kind of bottomed out for a little bit. We were down a total of 45 points at that time, or maybe just a little bit more, because I believe we ended 45 on the day down. But anyways, yes, we were down about 40 points on that at that point. And then from there, we actually kind of recovered due to major investor optimism. As you can see, it kind of shot right back up here. Sorry if the chart's a little small, but yeah, we kind of shot back up here due to, like I mentioned, investor optimism. And oftentimes, geopolitics are almost always a buy the dip, right? They are almost always a buy the dip for geopolitics, right? And the main reason why investors do this is because when they see markets going down during times like this, we've seen this before. They're almost always a buying opportunity. They don't want to miss out on potential gains again in a bull run, so they continuously buy. We once again saw large inflows of cash going into one specific sector, and that's going to be the tech sector, primarily hardware and some software companies, mainly AMD, Google, and Microsoft as well. And even memory was getting some of the love here. As you can see, Micron was getting a decent bit of the love. They kind of bottomed out at about that was yesterday. They kind of bottomed out at around, 440, like low 440s. The tip dropped and it kind of, stayed relatively near the lows. Didn't go too much lower, but kind of stayed near the daily lows. And as you can see, the run up from investors, it was a lot of love here. Obviously, it's having some trouble getting past that 455 line, but once it breaks through, I think Micron can reach all-time highs again at 472. Obviously, getting past that 460 hasn't been too much of an issue. But yeah, there's just a lot of capitulation here. Anyways, we saw memory get a lot of the love. Yeah, we saw Microsoft, especially a huge price action on Microsoft today. I love seeing this. Microsoft, I was calling the bottom on it for a long time now, about 350, 360 here. I'll be 100% honest. I didn't buy until a little bit ago. I didn't want to get caught with my pants down with Microsoft, so I kind of waited for a little bit more confirmation. I bought it at around the 411 level. So I'm up a little bit on it, I will be honest. And yeah, it was a great investment on my part. And I think you guys should definitely look to buy. I think there's going to be a lot of capitulation in this 425 line. And given what we know from what happened at the end of the markets, obviously I haven't mentioned that yet in the chronological timeline of the day. But given what we know, I think it could be slightly bullish for tech for the ongoing week. Anyways, though, we're capitulating at 425. If we break through here, I don't see why we wouldn't hit 447. It's just really tough to get through that, as well as that 430 line here. So, 447 could be seen. 470 could be seen by May, June-ish. And that's completely not even out of the question. But, yeah. Like I mentioned with Microsoft, I think the bottom's in for not only Microsoft, but software in general. I would stay away from other software companies that have actual material risks, like, CRM. I can go into a whole deep dive on that software issues as well and why I believe AI could replace specific companies. But I think the Microsoft one is completely overblown at this point, and we should be seeing sustained buying pressure up until like the 450s, maybe even the 470s. Anyways, after all of that occurred, the big dip, the big buying up, we were now at about 3:30 p.m. here. And funny enough, we saw a tip on Twitter from Bricks News at about 3:30 p.m., okay? I just want you to know, these guys, I couldn't find the exact tweet, but these guys, I got to give it to them. They came out and they did some great things with that. They reported it before Polymarket reported it. A bunch of these major sources, before Axios, Wall Street Journals, before anyone reported, these guys were on top of it first. So I really have to give them their flowers for that. That was very interesting. At about 3:30-ish, before it hit the mainstream media, they mentioned it. Funny enough, actually, I was driving when Bricks News reported this, and my buddy called me. He's like, "Yo, Noah, I saw this thing on Twitter from Bricks News. I don't think Iran and the United States are going to be talking much more. I think Iran has declined going to Pakistan on Wednesday to talk completely." And I'm like, that can't be real. I need to wait for a real source to report it. Obviously, I'm not saying Bricks News is not a real source, but, maybe like a more trusted one that I know better. Next, Polymarket reports it. The SPY drops 50 points 5 minutes later. It was insane. So, shout out to my friend, whoever you are. You know who you are. Anyways, this led to Polymarket reporting on it, which, then hit the mainstream media. I'll pull up the tree right here. So, at 3:40 p.m., Iran has officially declined participating in peace talks Wednesday. The SPY fell 50 points almost immediately, as we can see here. It's about 350. In literally minutes, it fell down. At 340, it kind of bottomed out. Something interesting happened, though. We saw some bullish resilience. They stayed relatively resilient and strong throughout this little peak here. They kind of coupled back some of their losses they lost. I'm not saying on the SPY, but once again, in the tech sector, we saw these stocks were up a lot on the days, right? As we can see, AMD kind of went down a little bit near the end. They went down to about 482-ish, around there. And then from there, they bottomed out and they shot all the way back up to 284.50. So they had a $2 increase in their price action, which is very, very great to see. We saw that not really much in Google. Google took a little bit of a beating today, although I do believe with their tensor processing units, the new ones they're making with Marvell, both those companies have real material gains they can make from. I would love to talk about that a little bit in another video, but for this one, I kind of want to stay a little bit on topic. But Google took a big beating. A little bit unjustified, but it's all right. They had a great run up. Microsoft, once again, had a great price action. They kind of bounced down to around this is the daily, sorry. Let me just go to the hourly. Microsoft bounced to about 423 and, gained back $1. So I'd love to see it, especially with all that bad news. Same with Micron as well. They kind of gained a little bit near. They finished positive, which is great to see when they were down a lot. But yeah, overall, they had great resilience and they showed great price action. But after hours, other than tech, after hours, the markets kind of reacted a little panicky, I will say. Me, myself, I was kind of thinking, is this going to go into a full war? What's going to happen? I was very uncertain. Until, I kid you not, guys, literally 5 minutes later, Trump announced a ceasefire extension, which is what you're seeing the headline on CNBC right here. So, this ceasefire extension was reported primarily by CNBC, popularized by them, but it was also reported about, I know it's like six minutes ago, but it's probably over 2 hours ago now, by Axios, once again. So I'd love to read you guys' article. I actually took some notes on it, so if you guys don't want to read it, it's all good. I took a lot of notes on it, so you can trust my word for it if you want, but I'm just going to give you guys a quick little summary here. Essentially, the ceasefire was done, and it was made after the move requested from the Pakistani mediators, where Trump essentially blamed a seriously fractured Iranian government for not being able to produce a unified negotiating position yet. The key idea is that, the White House here seems to believe Iran's leadership is divided so much internally. So instead of forcing an immediate deadline, Trump is giving Iran more time to settle on one proposal that the U.S. can then respond to. So he's given the ceasefire up until that point. At the same time, he did not fully ease pressure, so don't think it's all cleared yet. Axios actually reports that the U.S. military was ordered to keep the naval blockade on Iranian ports, so on the Strait of Hormuz, I believe, in place and stay ready to resume fighting if any talks were to collapse. So, as we know, there are a few risks here. Iran has stated many times that they are against the blockade, which all started on the weekend due to a violation of the ceasefire from both sides. The USA has stated that the blockade will not be lifted unless they free the strait in good faith, which Iran said will not happen until certain measures are met. one of which being the $100 billion to $120 billion of seized assets going back to Iran, which if I was a betting man, that is simply not going to happen. Look at the orange man here. There's no way he's giving that money back. So if I was a betting man, like I said, I would not do that. I would, slam the under on Polymarket. That's not going to happen. Another thing I want to talk about is the fractured Iranian government and kind of what that means here. So what this word fractured means, essentially, is we've been hearing throughout this entirety of the war that, maybe Trump's talking to some shadow regime that is against the Ayatollah, that's against Khamenei's son, that is completely different, that's going to bring peace back to Iran, And we're also hearing, okay, maybe Khamenei's son's in power, maybe the IRGC is, maybe the Ayatollah, whatever. We're hearing so many different things. And what the fractured means is that because there's so much potential division in the Iranian government at its core, no one is able to decide on what they want. So that's why peace can keep getting, or the peace plan can keep getting, taken away or changed or this or that, because no one in their own government knows what they want. So I understand that, from my understanding, the United States government knows this, and I believe they're giving them more time just to figure that out, to kind of come together. Now, with that shadow regime, that was kind of a big thing that no one was really talking about a lot. With that shadow regime, if I'm not mistaken, in like mid-March, they were under the belief that Trump was talking to them. The United States government was talking to them, and they were saying this publicly. Now, Trump was saying this is a good regime. They're going to bring peace back. This is the regime change we've wanted. They're talking to them. We haven't heard anything really much about them since, except for when they said, we're going to prove to you that how much power we have and how much pull we have actually in the Iranian government. And they offered a gift to Donald Trump. They didn't mention what the gift was, but in my personal opinion, I believe the next day, I think that gift was when they let ships pass through the strait for a short period of time, unblocking it. That's what I think it was. That being said, we don't really know who they're talking to, and we simply just don't know what's going to happen. So I think they're kind of giving this as a mediation period just to let themselves figure that out. Now I kind of want to talk about what does this actually mean long term. So if the strait stays closed until mid-May, I fear that we could see oil prices jump all the way back to the highs we made on early April 7th, Tuesday, 07, April 2026. I think we can see it go back to 117, potentially 120 a barrel if it lasts until May. I think we can maybe see 120 a barrel, and if that strait stays closed, all we need is the flow of oil back. We just want the flow back. That's all it is. Once the flow gets reestablished, we can see oil prices slowly come down, which is exactly what we all want in this world. I know me, when I go to fill up my gas car, I'm getting destroyed. Like, it's just so much money. It costs me about like $130 Canadian to fill up my Jeep tank. It's disgusting. It's terrible. Before it was like sub 100. Anyways, though, I think we could also see oil topping recent highs. Maybe 120 a barrel if this war continues. In my personal opinion, I don't think it's that far stretched to see even 150 if this continues into June, which is Morgan Stanley's biggest recessionary indicator. In other words, if we don't get the damn strait open, we're going to see a big recession, my friends, and that is a guarantee. So mark my words on that one, okay? Mark the day on this. I think if we see oil, stay strained until June, I think we might be screwed and might go into recession here. Now, enough of the bearishness, although there is some goodness coming out of it because the futures market does really, really like, not the futures market, sorry, the post market does really, really like the ceasefire agreement. As we're seeing, Google's up $2.30, Microsoft is up $1.60, memory's up $3.50. I believe oil's come down a slight bit. I could be wrong. Someone please fact check me on that. AMD's up $2. So as we know, tech is probably going to be the big winner tomorrow. So I just want to kind of give you guys a little analysis for tomorrow. I personally believe that markets are going to be optimistic in the morning, and we might see a little fizzle out by midday and potentially a buy the dip opportunity on near close for tech. And I wouldn't be surprised if new news comes out about Iran by the end of the week and or into the weekend, setting up a potential bullish run into the new week. Like I mentioned, I don't think it's any of the two countries' best interest to keep this war going. And I'll explain what I mean with some facts about that later. But I kind of want to just go back to that analysis I was talking about. So what I mean by that fizzle out is usually when there's some major bullishness, pay attention in the first 15 minutes of the market tomorrow, okay? I want you to pay close attention. Those are usually the most important minutes of the market because it dictates usually how strong a trend is going to be. So pay attention in the first 15 minutes. If you see a fizzle out in the first 15, stay cautious on potentially buying. If you do see some strong momentum into tomorrow in the first 15, do not hesitate to buy. I would recommend buying, tech heavy tomorrow. Putting your money mainly into Microsoft, I think, is great. AMD, Google has a lot of upside potential. Micron as well, maybe Micron too. There's a lot of volatility on memory, but I believe memory is one of the most valuable plays you can do. I think these memory stocks like SanDisk and Micron. Matter of fact, let me pull up SanDisk stock really quickly. It has had a huge price action over a little bit, but I will be doing another long format video on SanDisk and why I think they could, potentially even double, triple again over the next year to 2 years. So I think it's definitely a wonderful stock, and that has to do with the new technology they're going to be creating with SK Hynix that I haven't heard a lot of people be talking about recently. That's going to be something to optimize memory and sits right on the GPU. So it's very interesting. Keep your eyes open for that. But I would kind of stay away from it if you're kind of going to be day trading, midterm trading, just because, the volatility and everything. And mind you, this is not financial advice. This is not a solicitation. This cannot be personalized financial advice. Obviously, I don't know your situation. I'm just saying what my opinions are and how I view it. Anyways, though, like I mentioned, I think it is very plausible that we could see a run-up once again very soon. Ultimately, if these guys in Iran propose something that is beneficial and makes sense for both countries. Overall, it's in both of their best interests to do this, kind of building on what I said before. The USA, why it's in their best interest, first of all, they get oil down and the consumer can stay afloat and the stock market rips. The consumer was on, their deathbed a little while ago, but they've started to stabilize through sheer resilience, and same with the labor market. If we can get the labor market to, I think we've seen the bottom in the labor market. ADP data came back really, really good these past few bits, but, everyone's kind of rejecting it right now. Inflation obviously is a little high just because, the war. We can reject the next, few ones for that. But that being said, the labor market's kind of bottoming out. Private credit is bottoming out as well. And we're seeing a rise in consumer sentiment. So the consumer could be saved. All we need is just for oil to go down. Now, I'm not saying we're going to see $60 a barrel like we were before the war. I'm potentially saying if this gets done by maybe this week, next week, we can go down to what we were on Friday of last week. Maybe $80 a barrel, maybe a little less, maybe 70 we can tap into. Either way, that's the motives for the United States, why they want to get the deal done, as well as the stock market ripping as well. And for Iran, they stop hemorrhaging $500 million per day due to the blockade of the Strait. I don't know if you guys understand how bad this naval blockade of the Strait is for Iran, but they are hemorrhaging $500 million per day, and their economy is not as strong as the United States. So that is a lot of money for them, and their economy is currently in shambles. No one's really talking about how bad their economy is currently doing. So that's why they really want that blockade up. I'd personally be looking tomorrow at, Marvell Tech. I think that has a lot of momentum, and they're a great company. They're manufacturing 2 new TPUs with Google, one of which is going to be optimized for inference and agentic AI, which is going to be something I can do a whole deep dive on that as well. Agentic AI and inference is going to be the future, and we're seeing companies slowly switch over from AI training models to inference because they know that is going to increase demand for these products by 10 to 100x. So I think CPU companies, low energy consuming, high optimization, high efficiency chips like AMD are going to get extreme market share. That's why I think, in my humble opinion, they have a price target of $350 for me by the end of the year. Also, ARM is a wonderful company in that sense, and Google as well can benefit because their tensor processing units are wonderful and they are made directly for AI training. So with their new chip with Marvell, they are going to be making TPUs that are designed strictly for inference, which is very interesting. So keep your eyes on that. It's one of those stocks you just get into, kind of hold forever. Over the next 6 months or a year, you will definitely make a good return on it. And obviously, this is not financial advice. That's just my opinion. I'd also be looking at Microsoft as well, other than AMD, Google, memory stocks, and maybe Marvell as well. I'd be looking at Microsoft just because, Microsoft has had a great price action recently. It started, bottoming out. I think the software rut it was in is completely blown over. For some companies, I do understand there's actual material risks. Like, for example, with Salesforce, I understand that maybe they can commoditize, or AI can commoditize, some forms of SaaS, software as a service. like, you know, what CRM offers. Like, why would you need to pay for CRM when AI can probably in the future manage your customer relations for you and at a better rate? You know, it's just little things like that. People were worried a lot about Microsoft Office and that product they offer, which is about 36% of their business, if I'm not mistaken, by that revenue split. About the same as Azure. But in my opinion, that is under the assumption that, you know, they're not going to optimize it better. And in my mind, with it, for like a user's mind, right, and from a logical standpoint, I kind of really like Office. Like, I really do. Having a spreadsheet in front of me is so much easier than just getting a, you know, an AI bot to just make one for you. I'd rather just have it myself and then incorporate it with a Copilot or something, which is what Microsoft would probably do. So I feel like, you know, it's overblown, and I definitely would love to see the stock get back to the 450s, 447. All we have to do is just stop capitulating at its 425, which I think we just need another catalyst, which is what we got today. Although it's very uncertain, you know, markets at this point, they don't care. They shrug off everything. So I think we can see a huge run up in tech over this next week, under the assumption that no bad news comes out. But I will keep you guys all the updated on everything that comes out. With Microsoft, if we get past 430 and 425, we can easily see 447, and then potentially 470 if all goes well. Essentially, that is my take on the markets for April 21st, 2026, and what I think is going to happen tomorrow on the 22nd. Leave a comment if you enjoyed it or enjoyed this video. Leave a like if you did as well. Please leave a comment as well, like, you know, what topics you want me to talk about. I'm really excited to present you this idea that I've been working on regarding, you know, AMD, ARM, Intel, memory stocks, and very specific software companies that I believe can benefit from this switch to agentic AI and inference. So that being said, team, take care. Good luck to all of you tomorrow. Thank you for tuning in. There's a lot more where this came from. Please subscribe if you enjoyed. Stay tuned for more, guys. Take care.